learn. We're gonna learn a lot of Gemara today, because everything that we're learning is taken from the Gemara. Okay, and we're gonna try to understand it. The answer is very simple, by the way, but like everything else which is connected to Torah, especially to Gemara, the answer has to be understood. If it's something very simple, then that probably means that it's not understood. So we'll try to make it complicated. We'll try to understand it. So here it goes. We are in the book of Brachot, and on page 5a or Aleph. Okay, but not in the beginning. Opa, somebody is knocking on the door. I'll try to ignore it. See, if they break down the door, I'll have to go open just before they do it. Okay, Rava, and some say Rav Hizda, says, if a man sees that painful suffering visit him, okay, painful suffering here, that means Yisurim. Okay, Yisurim is a very complicated word, and it means a lot of things. This is the translation of the Talmud, the only one I found in English that I can get on the internet. That is an ode done many years ago, probably more than 100 years ago. So in England. So, okay, that's how they translated it, and let's live with that. Let him examine his conduct. Anybody ever hear that? This is a very famous Gemara. If you see what painful suffering, by the way, what's painful suffering? What is it? What could it be? Who is going to measure what's painful, and who's going to measure what's suffering?
Maybe painful is, sorry.
What did you say, Pablo?
That maybe painful suffering is the suffering that we don't see a reason behind.
Of course, but what is a painful suffering? Can we define it?
It would be very individual, I think, because what's suffering to one person is nothing to another person.
I agree. Okay, that's what I want to hear. And now it's some things that it's very important to realize that these things are individual. Something that bothers you may not bother someone else. It's not, again, and this is our relationship with Hashem. Our relationship with Hashem is personal. It's not, we don't compare. Okay, and therefore, yes, exactly, that's the point. But somebody, you work, when you try to connect to Hashem, you do it with your heart, not somebody else's heart. So therefore, if you feel that it's to you painful and it's suffering, it's painful suffering. Okay, or if it's not painful suffering, it doesn't matter. Suffering is suffering. Okay, so that's what he says. If somebody feels that something is not working out, something is causing him sorrow, let him examine his conduct, just to check himself. By the way, we have to check ourselves every day, right? Not just only when these things happen. But when that happens, we have to check ourselves. For it is said in Sefer Eicha, let us search and try our ways and return unto the Lord. Right? Okay, we say it, by the way, those people who read Tachanun, we say it every Monday. We said it this morning, Monday, Thursday. If he examines, let's say a person checked himself, and he doesn't, and finds nothing acceptable. Can you do that? Can you imagine that? Now, you guys here, if you check yourself, will you find nothing objectable? Could that be? But that's what the Talmud says. If you check yourself and you don't find anything where you did wrong. Again, how do you know? See, this is what your heart tells you. We all do something wrong. En tzadik ba'aretz shall say tov v'lo echita. You know what that means? Anybody know what that pasuk means? En tzadik ba'aretz ve'adam en tzadik ba'aretz asher aseh tov v'lo echita. What does that mean? Anybody know? It means there's no tzaddik that exists on earth that does good and will not do something wrong. Okay, so how can it be? How that situation can even exist that somebody examined his conduct and he found nothing he says for objectable, but that's the idea, objectionable. But again, how do you know? Because you, in your heart, you know. This is not something which is done with the brain. In your heart, if a person can connect to his heart for a moment, okay, then he will know if this is because if what his heart will tell him. Okay, heart doesn't lie, unless it's under the power of Yetzirah. But that's the whole point, right? When a person has his surim, when the person has the suffering, then quite often he can get out of the power of the Yetzirah. So he can check with his heart, and his heart will tell him yes or no. And if he finds that there's nothing objectable, let him attribute it to the neglect of the study of the Torah. What do you say about that? What do you ladies think about that? No, anybody wants to say something? You understand what the Talmud is doing? You're saying he checked your heart. And you say, no, it could not be. I'm suffering, but that can't be because I didn't do anything that's what could be what could cause this kind of suffering, what I'm going through. Unpleasantness, what I'm going through. And so so if that's the case, then the Talmud says, Rav Hizda or Rava, and some say Rav Hizda says, then what you should do is you have to understand, but probably you are not studying enough Torah. You're wasting time. Okay, now when do you study Torah? When does you ladies here? When do you study Torah? How many hours a day?
Quite a few every day.
Every day. 3 hours, 5 hours, 10 hours?
It depends on the day, like 3, 5, sometimes more.
When do you not study Torah?
What?
When do you not study Torah? In other words, how do you study Torah?
Well, midrashi, like reading the pshat, midrashim, like mixed everything, like daf yomi.
Okay. Wow, you do that too?
Yeah,
wow.
I like it a lot.
Good. Okay. Anybody else? How does somebody else study Torah?
Also listen to the lectures.
Okay. Oh well.
And before 2 years, I read the Chabad website, the material every day, 20 materials every day.
How else?
And yeah, I take 1 or 2 hours every day. It depends area how long.
How else? How else? There's another interesting way to study Torah, even more potent. Huh?
Through some prayers when we read Shema, for example.
Okay, good. What else? What am I looking for? Anybody know? Why am I not stopping? I should stop at this point. Huh?
Hello?
What am I looking for?
Hello? Hello?
Yeah. Hello.
Hi. Yeah, sorry. I was it Shacharis in the morning? I normally go to the wall and pray, or a synagogue at 7 in the morning. And Minka.
Good. Yofi, I'm still continuing. I'm looking for something else.
Okay. And I have like the Torah on my iPhone. So obviously when I get time, I read that, and then if I've got the Chumash, then I could read the.
Good, and I'm looking for something else.
Okay.
Probably.
Guess what? Nobody can guess what I'm looking for.
Probably. Can I say something?
Can I
do your job, to go to your work?
What about breathing?
The thing is,
probably.
What about breathing? Wait a minute. Does anybody breathe here?
I think probably all day long when we do something, all our deeds, we analyze from the perspective of Torah. If it's if I'm probably wrong or right, probably
Thank
all day
you.
long.
But it's not even that, right, Irina? You're right, but I'm not even much more than that. Just when you breathe.
If I don't study Torah, I don't know what I had done wrong.
But I'm not talking about anything wrong here. I'm not talking about that. That's not what I'm looking for. I think Irina and Bracha both helped me out. So we can go on to the next thing. Every time. Hold on a second. Can I ask everybody to please stop breathing for about 10 seconds, 15. Okay? Just stop. Just so that you know. Now, when you start breathing again, okay, just don't pass out. And if you do, not on camera. I don't want to see. But when you start breathing again, please do it with Torah. When you breathe in air, do it with Torah. And not because we're learning Torah here. It says that if a person goes down the road and he studies Torah or thinks Torah, and he sees a tree, and he says, wow, what a beautiful tree, that person just forfeited his life. You ever hear that? That's in the Talmud. The person going down the road and think he's studying Torah. You don't need the text of Torah to study Torah. You can think it. And then he sees a beautiful tree. Like in Eretz Yisrael, there are many beautiful trees, right? And he says, wow, how beautiful is this tree? If he does that, that person just forfeited his life. If you try to understand what's wrong with that, what's wrong with seeing a tree, and how can he not see a tree? If he's not going to see a tree, he's going to bump into it. I think he's definitely going to see it once he's got a black mark here. The point is, but what the Talmud is saying, if he sees a tree and he disconnects from his Torah study, then he forfeits his life. You understand? And now it's everything that we do, and this is why we have mitzvah in everything that we do, right? It says what do we say in the Shema? When do we have to say Divrei Torah? V'dibarta bam?
On the way, when we rise, when we go to sleep.
Yeah, thank you. So when you guys tell me how much you study Torah, all you get to do is to get me jealous. I wish I could say that I was studying Torah for 5 hours a day. Wow. In the past, yes, but today I don't find 5 hours a day usually to find Torah. Okay, but Baruch Hashem, I try not to disconnect. You understand? Every Elena is drinking coffee. I hope she's drinking it together with the Torah. Okay, you understand? And not because we're learning now. That's the point. The point is you don't disconnect. Okay, so what he's saying here, that he checked himself, and he didn't do anything wrong. And he checked himself, and then what should he do? He can what's the word? He can attribute it. That's the word. He can attribute the fact that he has all these difficulties that are happening to him to the neglect of the study of the Torah. And that's very serious, because it means that he's like that guy who was walking down the road studying something in his head, and then he saw a tree and he disconnected. No good. Okay, but let's say the guy doesn't do that. He's drinking coffee and Torah at the same time.
Can I ask a quick question?
Absolutely, please.
Is it about disconnecting from the spirituality and just existing in the material world and completely ignoring everything else?
Right, but it's not that. That's not what I'm talking about. The thing is that the best way to disconnect, to connect to the Torah, is through material world. You understand? That's the real Torah. That's why it says when you go on the way. Because when you walk on the way, you walk. You're doing something. You're not just thinking. That's the whole thing. That's how you bring the world closer to Hashem. That's how you bring yourself closer to Hashem. That's the whole point. Okay? It's not, we're not talking, again, Baruch Hashem, here in our class, we don't separate spiritual and physical. They always go together. And therefore, for instance, if you ever go to Beit Midrash and you listen how people study Torah, they yell and scream. And even if you sit by yourself and you read out loud. Okay, you always connect the spiritual and the physical. They always work together. That's how a human being is, and that's what you do. Okay? Good question. So, again, where were we? We are at, so he can attribute the fact that he disconnected, he neglected the study of the Torah. Okay, maybe he even, he's used to 5 hours a day and he did 3.5. But, that's very hard to be in a situation where you can be that. You can do that. Okay, and if that's not, for it says here, it actually gives a pasuk. Asher agever, asher teyaseniya u'milchat talamdeni. Okay, if he did attribute, if thus still did not find anything that happened, okay, he didn't find that he disconnected. He's connected. Let him be sure that these are Yisurei Ahava. Yisurei Ahava. This thing sounds like the most oxymoron. You know what oxymoron is? a thing that contradicts itself, right? That seems to be the most contradictory thing that could exist. Yisurei, we said that, suffering, right? Hardship. Ahava is love. Love of whom? No, we're talking here of love of Kadosh Baruch Hu, of course. Okay? So now we learned something very interesting. Okay, but I always mention it to you ladies, and now here you have a source. Somebody, you're going down the street and you see somebody who is suffering. He's got, I don't know, he's got a dry leg. He's pulling his leg along, he's got some crutches, and you look at this guy and say, wow, I wonder what he did to do this, to deserve this. What was the wrong thing that he did? Can't say that. You see? This is what it's teaching us. It could be, but what he is going through is Yisurei Ahava. Now, Yisurei Ahava, it means that Hashem wants something good for him. Ahava. Hashem is showing his love to him. And interestingly enough, that it comes out through Yisurim. And we're going to have to understand why and how does it work. And we will. Okay? Understand? But this is exactly why when you see, in order to know, and also with yourselves, we all go from some difficulty. Okay? Sometimes the easiest thing to do is to punch yourself in the nose, but it hurts the most, probably. Unless you punch yourself in another place, which hurts even more. Okay? But you can't do that. Why not? Because maybe what you're going through is exactly Yisurei Ahava. How can you know? It's very difficult to know. It's very difficult to know. You have to have a really pure heart to be able to tell. Okay, but what you already know is just like you relate to someone else, that's how you should relate to yourself. Okay? So now let's little riddle. Any questions?